Dinner in 10 minutes? Well, fish is the ultimate fast food. Today we are making pan-seared cod with a red pepper jam, and it is fast. So really, it's literally 10 minutes probably from pan to table. I'm Judy Matusky. Thanks for joining. For those of you joining live, welcome. And for anybody that's going to be watching this on the replay, I'm a culinary nutritionist with Athens Nutrition, so it's good to be here today. And I'm always trying to get everyone to eat a little bit more fish. So today we are cooking with cod. This is just a really nice, thick, meaty white fish. It could be halibut, it could be something else, but you kind of want something that has a little bit more texture to it and not quite so thin like, flounder or tilapia, although that would work as well if that's what you have. But I do tend to like just a little bit of a meatier fish for this. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started because it's really so few ingredients. This is my absolute go-to recipe when I want fish during the week and I just want something that's I can put together pretty quickly. I usually get the fillets that are individually frozen, so I just pull them out of my freezer in the morning, throw them on a plate, pop them in the refrigerator, and then they're really ready to go when I get home from work. All right, so we have two cod fillets. You can see, if you can see, they're not both the same thickness, and that's sort of the problem I tend to run into. I don't always have fillets that are exactly the same thickness. I'm only gonna do two, the recipe calls for 4. So I have one that's going to be a little thicker than the other. That one's just going to take a little bit longer to cook, which is fine, but you just kind of have to keep an eye on it. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, I'm just going to pull this over so I get my pan heated up just a little bit. We're just going to salt and pepper the fish. I already did the one side, so you want to sort of salt and pepper both sides. You don't need a whole lot. Again, it's up to you as far as the sodium. If you're concerned about a little bit too much salt in your diet, just use a little less. But we do want a little bit of a seasoning to start with. And then the flavors that we're using in the little bit of the quick pan sauce is really going to bring a lot of flavors together. All right, so a little salt and pepper. That's to get things started. And to get going with the pan, I have a non-stick skillet. It's great if you can use a skillet that would fit all 4 fillets, so you can do them all at the same time. This one's a little bit smaller because I'm only going to be doing 2. I have 1 tablespoon of butter. So this is a combination of butter and olive oil to get started. And the reason why I'm doing that is that I want a little bit of this butter for some real good flavor that it's going to bring to the fish. White fish like cod, halibut, they're very lean, so there's very little fat in them. So they need a little bit of help, and especially to keep them from drying out. And I like to combine about a tablespoon of olive oil with about a tablespoon, or a little less, I think I even have a little less of the butter, together, because we're going to try to get this pan fairly hot. And if you add the olive oil with the butter, it helps to reduce the smoking point of the butter. So the butter is going to start to brown a little bit. We do want it to bring up, we really want that heat in there because we're trying to sear. Now we're not going to get a crusty sear on this. That's really not the intention. It's more of like a pan saute, but it does cook pretty quickly. All right, so that's pretty good. I think we have our heat up there pretty well. So we're just going to take the two fillets. This one's a little bit thinner, and I did measure them. They're a little less than 1 inch in thickness. This one piece on this one side is about 1.5 inches. So I kind of love it if you can I love getting fillets that are around 1 inch. That's a pretty easy standard way then to cook. And it's only going to take probably, I don't know, 4 minutes per side. So it's technically like, generally 10 minutes per inch thickness, but that really can vary a lot, I think, and depending on your cooking method. But we're gonna go ahead and put this in, and you should be able to hear that little sizzle. That's a good indication that your pan is hot enough and it's really ready for this fish. All right, so let's go ahead and let that go. I'm just gonna step away from it and let it do its thing over there. We do want to, I'm gonna keep an eye on this because I'm not using my regular gas burner as much as I'm using this electric burner. Sometimes it's a little hard to regulate the heat. So I want it hot enough, but not so that I don't really want to get it too hot as well. All right, so while that's cooking, we're gonna put together the really simple, easy red pepper glaze, all right, or a little sauce that we're gonna put on top. It's basically, 3 ingredients. So we're using a red pepper jam. This is just any kind of hot pepper jam you can find. Most supermarkets have it. You could find it at specialty markets. I just always have this in my refrigerator because I love it on cheese boards. I love it with sauces like this. I think it's just great on some toast. So it's about 2 teaspoons. If you're doing 4 fillets, it's about 2 teaspoons. I'm gonna do 2 teaspoons anyway because that's okay if I have a little extra sauce. So about 2 teaspoons of your red pepper jam. If you have a jam, if you want it to be a little bit spicier, then you can add a little more red pepper to it. Red pepper flakes, which is what I often do. So sometimes if you get it, it's not that spicy. I'll just add a little more red pepper flakes and mix it in just to make it a little bit hotter. The nice thing about this dish, it's really a good combination because, you know, with whitefish like cod or halibut, they're relatively mild, which is really good for those of you that aren't really very fish forward in your diet and you just don't love the flavor of fish. These types of fillets are fantastic for that because they are really mild, and that's great for you. But also we need to bring some flavor to it. So I like this sauce because you have that the saltiness from some capers that we're going to add. We have the sweetness from the red pepper jam. We have some heat from that red pepper jam as well. And then we're going to bring a little acidity to the dish at the end. All right, so we have our 2 teaspoons of the red pepper jam. Now we're going to add capers, and I love capers. I can never get enough capers whenever I'm cooking with capers. So I think the recipe calls for about 2 tablespoons, which this, I'm going to just drain some of the fruit now just to make it easier to get this out. But it's not going to be the whole jar. It's probably maybe half of one of these small jars, just a few ounces. I'm not measuring. Again, you can just really eyeball this. No need to really be measuring. A lot of this, you don't have to get actual measuring spoons to make this sauce. But generally, I'd say maybe two tablespoons or so. That might be about half the jar of this little small jar. And then we're going to add about 2 teaspoons of just like a nice grainy mustard. If you're going to use Dijon mustard, I would use a little less mustard because that's pretty strong. So maybe a little over a teaspoon of that. But if it's one of these grainy mustards, which I really love for this dish, I'd say a good 2 teaspoons for sure. And then we're just going to stir this around a little bit because we're just going to assume once I flip these over, we're going to just add this right to the pan. All right, so let's just check this. And I'm just going to show you this. This is a fish spatula. So if you don't have one of these, I would encourage you to get one. They are fantastic. They're not only great for flipping fish, especially if you're doing a longer fillets or whole fish on the grill or inside, but they're great for flipping pancakes. I really use this all the time because it's really nice and thin and it really gets under everything pretty easily. All right, so I'm going to come in here. I'm going to take this one, particularly the one that's a little thinner. That one's really starting to cook through. So again, it's maybe 3 or 4 minutes per side. So I don't know if you can see that, but it really is browning up. So it is getting a little bit of a sear. You know, I said it doesn't really sear that much. It does, but once you start adding a little liquid, it's gonna not be quite, it's not gonna really be like, have that crunchy sear when you're eating it necessarily. So let's keep this going. But that's exactly how we want it to look. We really want it to brown up, and we do want to get it a little bit as seared as we can on the one side. Now on the other side, it's going to cook a lot quicker. So that's probably only a few minutes. Now this, other than the one that's a little bit thick, that'll be a little bit longer. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead, and this is going to spatter a little bit. I'm just going to add this sauce kind of all around the bottom of the pan. And then just to kind of heat it up, and then I'll spoon it up over the fish as it continues to cook. All right, so put that in, and I am going to add a splash of some white wine just to help get it a little bit saucier, because this is pretty thick with just the mustard and the jam and the capers. So I'm just going to add maybe a tablespoon or 2. You can kind of just judge, just a little bit, just to get a little bit more of a sauce. And then I'm just going to I'll come over on this side if you can see. But then I'm just going to tip the pan a little bit, and then I'm just going to just spoon this sauce right up over the fish as it finishes to cook on the other side. And this thin one I think is already done. All right, so we'll just get that, and then you'll do the same thing with when you go to serve it. We'll just spoon it up over. All right, so again, cooking this on the stove like this, because it cooks so quickly, again, these are pretty close to being done. because it cooks so quickly, and you can keep an eye on it. That's why I love cooking this type of a fish, like a whitefish or even salmon, on top of the stove, because you really can keep an eye on it. You can just take your fork and just kind of flake it a little bit. Just sort of open it up just to see, did it cook all the way through? And I think for this little thin one, yeah, it's pretty much. It's just a few more minutes. I mean, not even a few minutes, probably like half a minute. We might have that one pretty well done. So then to plate it, well, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to let this go for just a minute because I want to show you that how to continue to build out this meal so that it becomes a really fast meal. So when you go to plate this, and we'll take it off, even if this isn't quite done, that's okay. Let's just take it off just to show you. All right, so here's the one fillet, and then here's the one that's just a little bit thicker, which probably is going to take probably at least another minute or two in here. This is a little bit. Let me get it on that spatula. All right, so we have our 2 fillets, and then I'm going to move this across over here and then take it off heat. Then just take more of the sauce, and this is already pretty well sauced because I have a lot of extra sauce in here because I only did the 2 fillets rather than 4, so you'd have plenty to go around for 4. So here's the sauce, and then what I would do, here's the fish with the sauce. Isn't that gorgeous? I mean, it really is a really pretty, although my plate's a little bit messy. But anyway, it's a really quick, fast fish. You can see it took us like no time at all. But then what I would do with this pan is I bring it back onto the heat, and then I have a pre-washed bag of spinach. So I'm gonna just go ahead and add that to the pan. There's still a little bit of that sauce and the flavor from the fish that we cooked it in, so that's going to help to flavor this spinach. And why not? So just use the same pan, and then let the spinach cook down. I'll just like throw a lid on top of that, and we'll let it go. And then you can serve the spinach alongside of the fish, which would be absolutely gorgeous, right? So you'd have your spinach, which is only going to take probably another couple minutes. Then the other thing that I would do to really create balance on this plate is that I always have frozen brown rice pre-cooked in my freezer. Pick it up usually at Trader Joe's, but you can kind of pretty much get it anywhere, I think. Then that goes in the microwave for literally 4 minutes while I'm making the fish. And then you have your brown rice, which is a really nice high fiber, healthy grain, along with your fish fillet, and then with a nice, maybe half plate full of some cooked spinach. And I'm telling you, this is 10 minutes. You've got dinner in 10 minutes. So think of fish as your fast food resource, and just try to always have frozen, individually wrapped fish in your freezer because it's so easy to pull out. You know, shrimp is great, scallops would be great too. Doesn't have to be fish in the sense of what we think of as fish, but also just general seafood all around. Just pretty quick cook. All right, so if you want to join an upcoming culinary workshop, we're going to do, we have 2 coming up, April and May, on fantastic desserts. The first one's going to be on Mediterranean desserts, and the other one is going to be all on different cakes. And I've lightened them up trying to use olive oil or a really healthy plant-based fat. The one that you absolutely want to join for, because it's delicious. I just made it last night. It's an avocado chocolate mousse. It's amazing. It's super creamy. My husband had it. I gave it to him. He's like, had I not watched you make that with the avocados, I would have never known the avocados were in there. It was so chocolatey and so creamy and so yummy, but using a very hard, healthy fat rather than like heavy cream. So we're going to do a lot of different desserts like that. So they're great desserts to kind of use as we get into the summer season. So as we kind of, all of us are trying to maybe cook a little bit lighter. All right, so if you like these videos, please share them. I really appreciate that. I will be back again next week, so I will see you next Thursday. Until then, one of my favorite mottos from Bon Appetit is to cook the way that you want to feel. And I think that's what we're trying to do here. Cooking fast and eating light. All right, you take care. Have a good week. Bye-bye.